So I started in Ealing for the Kingdom Encounter Conference 19. There's only one thing to talk about: the bridegroom.
Loving Jesus means that he holds your attention without competition. And all the wonderful things that happen in a love exchange with Jesus is the fullness of what he died to give you. So when you have a life that is not in love with Jesus, then that life is unable to experience all of the wonderful things he died to give to you.
Tell them why they should love Jesus.
Oh man alive, he's the best. He's life himself. When you enter into Christ, you enter into a new life, and he is awesome, and he sustains you, he fulfills you, and he is everything that my heart, soul, and spirit desires. It's in the person of Christ Jesus. He delivered me. He delivered me 10 years ago. I was a cocaine addict, I was an alcoholic, I was a self-harmer, and I was living on and off the streets. I had no idea that Jesus was real. No one told me that he was alive and that the tomb was empty. No one told me that I could give my life to him and that he would transform me, until January 2010, and a man stepped into my world and told me about Jesus. And I asked Jesus into my life, and on the very first encounter with the person who is Jesus Christ, he delivered me instantly from cocaine addictions, alcohol addictions, self-harming. I was living on and off the streets, and my body was covered in scars, and my mind was tormented. I was hearing voices, my life was destroyed, and then Jesus stepped in and replenished and restored my life in a moment. I simply called on his name. I said, Jesus, if you're real, save me. In the hands of God touched me.
And then I left and went to Cambridge, and I did a School of His Presence and a few services with my friend Phil Shaw.
I encourage people out there today, maybe you are going through a tough season in your life, and challenging season right now, but when I recently looked and just saw in Luke chapter 3 when Jesus, he's baptized in the Jordan, he's in an amazing season, but then walks straight into his season of testing in the desert. And sometimes we can be in seasons like this where we're being tested in order for what God's going to do next in our lives. And it's interesting that when you look at what Jesus does is he walks through 40 days of testing in order for him to enter into a synagogue one day and to receive that scroll. In fact, the scriptures tell us that the scroll is handed to Jesus. And many times in our life when we have an acclamation or a word, maybe that baptism moment in the Jordan, that great time when God speaks to us of what God's going to do in our lives, we kind of race after trying to snatch that fulfillment. But it says the scroll was handed to Jesus. And I want to encourage you today that what we have to do is walk through those seasons waiting for God to hand it to us at the right moment, not to snatch it.
I preached on loving Jesus. It is more important than all the toil in all the world, all the clean doctrine in all the world, and all the staying away from sin. It is loving Jesus that is higher than all of it. As a matter of fact, no amount of activity in the King's service will make up for the neglect of the King. So how important is the presence of God to you in your daily life?
Well, I guess it's important to me in that someone who likes to hear the voice of God and spending time with the Lord, just to hear what he has to say, not just for other people's lives, but for my life. And so I like to spend time in his presence just for direction. You know, I'm not a person who likes to seek after prophetic words from other people for direction for my life. I like to hear what the Lord has to say first, and I think many times people miss the shepherd while they're looking for the prophets. And he says, Jesus said, my sheep will hear my voice. And people are very quick, I think, to run to prophetic conferences, prophets, when they don't run to the closet. And
you said that his sheep hear his voice. I read this morning, it's crazy, check this out. Little children can literally do nothing but receive. A life of such one is utterly dependent, being sustained in every way by another, capital A.
And this is why we are called lambs, the weakest and most defenseless of domesticated animals. Check this out. Sheep cannot bear burdens. They cannot pull a wagon. They cannot learn tricks. They cannot be trained because their brains do not retain information. Sheep eat, sleep, and play. Everything, including total protection, must be given to them. Jesus greatly loves lambs.
And then drove over to Dorset, Shaftesbury.
I just felt in the last times of getting close to the Lord that He's saying to I don't know, it's just to me, but if I ever don't hold your affection from me. It's like a tangible thing that as I'm worshipping, I feel my affection going to Him, and He just wants that. And it's just like He wants that to be shared, you know. And that's why I love what you're saying. Yeah. Don't hold your affection. I even felt like, is it a song I'm gonna get or something? You know?
Don't hold your affection from me. Everybody watching this, don't hold your affection from Him. He wants it.
Yeah.
Be all pretty far.
Tea would be great.
Yeah, what would you like?
Green tea by this one.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have.
Yeah, green tea would be
Two
well.
green teas, yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's all right.
So we just finished the first half of the School of His Presence here in Shaftesbury. And man, the bridegroom was saying, "Don't forget me." The bridegroom was reaching his hand through the lattice, trying to get everyone's attention and remind them of His beauty so as to dazzle them away from being bogged down by their surroundings and their self-consciousness, and be lifted up into a vision and by a vision of Jesus in a fresh way. Man.
Just falling in love all over again, man. I felt He was just taking away all those additions, helping us to recognize that His face is blinding to all those other things which are lesser than Him.
David, what have you done?
I was just trying to keep you warm, and I've melted the carpet down here by moving the heater.
He totally melted the carpet of the church trying to move the heater.
The other guy was getting told off, but I had to confess it was me.
Loving Jesus means that He holds your attention without competition.
It's amazing. That's good. That's so good. Oh, you want your tummy to go okay?
Oh, she like that? You did like that, did you? She's purebred, huh?
Good girl, Mum. Blue girl's not sitting. Blue girl, sit. Yeah, this is Missy Paws. Good.
And we just waited on the Lord, and it was so sweet. We felt the Lord was setting us free from the need to have all of these expectations and logic and things people want from us, things we want to see of ourselves, and just be blinded by God's open spectacle of Jesus crucified on our behalf, setting us free from everything else so that we can come into the nothingness that is true faith. Faith equals nothingness.
His burden is light and His yoke is easy. And so if we're ever feeling a sense of heaviness, it's because we haven't taken it and left it before His feet.
But this is called Locks Lane. It's a Christian encounter retreat center, they call it, at Locks Lane, and you can rent out these rooms, and there's meeting rooms in here. Right now, Jay Thomas is here doing a songwriting / worship type thing, worship school. But it's a pretty amazing place here. Any thoughts this morning, David?
Yeah, man, just believe in the one whom God sent. That is the highest works of man, to believe in Jesus Christ.
Yes. What work shall we do? Jesus says, believe. And then I came back to the city. I'm here in Ilford, and I did City Gage Church last night for the In His Presence conference with Christ for All Nations. Dr. Tony Stone, tell me, who is one of the most
precious people you've ever met that carried the presence of God?
I think there have been many, many men that we've met over the years, but I have to say that the person that most touched my heart, because through her there was a sense of God's presence, was Corrie ten Boom. She had such a story to tell, and you saw it working out even in her old age. She was in her 80s when my wife and I spent time with her and were introduced to her, and there was something about her where you felt not just the presence of Corrie ten Boom, but the presence of the Lord. And it was such a rich blessing, and she carried that to the day she died.
Yes. So if you were to give the people one piece of advice for their lives, what would you give them?
Yeah, be daily in love with Jesus.
How can they do that? What would be one practical way?
Keeping their eyes on him.
Yes.
It's difficult to love from a distance, but to love is to want to be in their presence.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.